All right, this is Jeffrey D. Calhoun, author of the best-selling book, The Guide for Every Screenwriter, and you are listening to The Break It Down Show with John and Pete. I gotta tell you, I love this show. They dive so deep into their subject matter and bring on experts around the field so that you can get insider knowledge of what they are breaking down episode by episode. Speaking of experts, today's guest is Chris Hurd, a writer-director of a beautiful film titled Find Your Voice. Finally, I want to congratulate John and Pete and the Break It Down show for hitting 1,000 episodes. Absolutely incredible, guys. That is a landmark for any podcaster. And if anybody's interested in listening to my podcast, John and Pete were essential in helping me find my voice. And you can listen to my podcast at The Successful Screenwriter with Jeffrey D. Calhoun, wherever podcasts are available. Now, don't forget to head to SaveTheBrave.org and participate in supporting our mission by clicking the Donate tab. Now, on to the show.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Cruz.
This is Bryce Vine.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
Nathan
This
East.
is Sebastian Younger.
This is Daryl Amy.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
This is Dr. Bob Greenberg.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Take two. I'm not an actor. This is Chris Hurd, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
And now, the Break It Down show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
You know what's great about you, Chris, is that you take direction well. Hey, so I appreciate you coming on. First off, we have to acknowledge that I am in Orange County and you are in Australia. What part of Australia are you in?
Sydney.
Okay, good. And is Sydney, are you born and raised city guy, or did you come from the country, or what?
Originally from the country.
Okay.
The bush, a place called Benalla, and then moved around a lot. Actually spent a bit of time in America and ended up in England for a long time and then back here.
When you figure out what it is that you want to do, I mean, you could say you're in the bush, but the reality is you still have TV and all these things growing up. You catch this bug pretty early because when you look at your resume, and I've got your website up here, you can look at all of your work, and you've been at this for a long time, and making your way higher and higher in it. How does a kid from the bush in Australia figure that out?
Look, there's no easy way, and look, I certainly haven't made it. It's a lifelong endeavor, film, and I think it's like anything. I'm sure you'll appreciate this. The more you understand, the little you understand, or the more you realize you don't understand. So, and film is very much that way. The more you get into it, the more. Well, for one thing, I now appreciate those guys make it look easy. The ones that are at the top, the veterans, people like the Coen brothers or whoever, these guys, and the documentary, filmmakers, those guys make it look easy. And it's not. It's really, really difficult. And I think I've only kind of made it by making every mistake along the way.
Yeah. I like to say my bonsai tree of life is a stick. And I've just pruned away all the mistakes, and it's just a stick. There's nothing left.
Right.
Because I've done it all. I've done it all.
You've had a few lives too. I guess a bit of a cat, huh?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's for sure. I've been hit by a tank, our own tank, and somehow managed to survive.
Literally hit by a tank.
I mean, not my person, but the vehicle I was in a head-on collision with the tank.
God.
And then it hit the vehicle behind us and just kept right on tanking along. And this is our guys.
Well, that puts things in perspective.
It really does. It really does. When you think about, okay, so you're a kid from the bush and you're starting to get into TV film and it seems like people from Australia have to leave Australia for the most part to make it somewhere. Like you guys got to
definitely.
Yeah. Why is that?
I think look, it's we are very isolated, obviously the other side of the world. So it's only a small community here, probably like small town America in many ways.
Yeah.
We're also quite I think we suffer from isolationism. A lot of the, I would say a majority of Australia is quite happily provincial, very, and I don't mean that in a negative way.
Okay.
But there are obviously a lot of negatives, or, there can be negative connotations. Look, it's unfortunately, you've got to go to America, or you've got to go to LA or London or New York to really, it's sadly, like, I think, they're all small islands or small countries. You find it's probably the same, that the gene pool gets very shallow because effectively all the top talent leaves at an early age, and they're almost forced to even to be taken even remotely serious. You've got to almost go and make it somewhere else to come back to Australia, and that's certainly what I did. I try to get into television, and on the camera side at an early age, and I just kept hitting brick walls, and I did quite a few TAFE. TAFE is like a tertiary education. I did a lot of TAFE courses, and they didn't really. They were terrific, and in fact, I'm doing one now again. But there's no guarantee of a job. So, my father offered a chance to go to college in America, and I went there. I went to Ohio State University, and believe it or not, that's where I got my first job. Working for a production company, and I, spent most of my time, lugging gear around, camera and lights, and shooting small commercials. So, funny enough, my break came from America, in the Midwest.
Yeah, and then you must know this because you were at school at Ohio State, but the Buckeyes are such a big part of American culture because of the football team primarily. The other sports do well too, but Ohio State, we instantly go to college football, even if we're not fans.
Yeah. Look, I love it too. I still watch it, and funny enough, this is showing my age, but I was actually there when. Well, maybe this is actually something they'd rather forget, but when Woody Hayes dragged a Clemson player off the field.
Yes.
But it shows the passion there for the football, which you got to admire. They live and breathe it, and a bit like we do with the Wallabies and rugby.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I want to get back to the movie thing because we had Tony Tost on. We were just talking about this off mic, and Tony, he made Longmire his own project because he knew that world, and then he got to do other things. So he got to make like a Depression era sort of rabble rouser movie where you have the machine and you have the workers trying to sort out who's going to be boss. And that's fantastic. Okay. And then he got to do season 2 of a show called The Terror that's out here. And it sort of takes these historical things. The first season was like looking for a sea passage across the top of North America through Canada. Right. And yeah. And those guys basically found it, but they didn't come back. And so it's like, ooh, how can we take this and turn this into a thriller, kind of.
You mean they died there?
In real life, they died there.
Wow.
And they right when they had figured it out, So what caused them to not come back? And so then the season that Tony is doing, they took the internment of the Japanese here in America during World War II, and they threw like a traditional Japanese ghost story into it. When he was, these great ideas. When he was talking, I'm like, what are the things that you've learned? Because he's somewhat new to this, right? Longmire hasn't been around all that long. Like as an executive producer, I asked him, like, what did you like? Oh my God, I couldn't do this without this particular profession or person. And he's like, the prop people. I had no idea. I come up with these crazy ideas. And then they've got to go find era-specific, cans of sardines in this case, or this impossible stuff. And they can't just find one solution because, the director's going to want something else. They're going to be like, no, I see a round tin. And so they've got to already have all these things sorted out.
Gee.
And I think about that and I'm like, oh my God, there are so many details because it really is.
Yeah.
It's your entire world. What is that thing for you? You've made this movie, Finding Your Voice. What was some of the things that you I had never thought about needing to understand this or have this capacity?
Well, the weird thing is, I think all young people out there, it's funny. It's like music. Filmmaking is intuitive up to a degree, but the more you get into it, and once you start making a feature film, and not many people, I hear not many people actually get it made. So that's probably the one thing that I am very proud of, getting it finished. What you learn is it's a collaborative. That, just like you said, you rely so much on other people, and I guess, and that means you've really got to work at relationships. And I guess that was a really big learning curve too, because I wanted to be the auteur, the great, I wanted to be a Fellini or a Godot or Truffaut. I wanted to be, one of the, one of the great, God, there's so many American directors. But look, that comes, I think, with a huge amount of experience and knowledge and respect and appreciation for all the other elements of filmmaking. For example, the props, the art department, they're invaluable. In our film at that entry level, it wasn't, we just didn't have anybody,
right?
But where you, like, for example, Adam Saunders was he was the clapper loader, he was the sound recordist, he shot some B-roll, he was pretty much doing, he, at the time he was very young, and by the way, Adam is the lead actor, he plays the character E. I actually met him working for the ABC, which is, our broadcast, right, Australian Broadcast Commission, and I was doing children's TV there. Not for a long stint, but a very entertaining one. And Adam and I worked on some funny shows together, and we got to bond, and, we were flying around a lot, and he was only kind of 19, and, I was 3 times his age almost. And anyhow, we had a laugh, and we said, oh, we've got to make a film. And, one thing led to another. But back to what you said, I guess I relied so much on him. And then later on, oh my gosh, just in the, sound is again one of those things that there's so much to understand and learn. Yeah. And you can, and I'm sure you understand this, Pete, so much can go wrong, and you just can't do that on your own. So the first thing you've got to learn is really, or understand is to respect all the other elements of filmmaking, that it is a collaborative, that it is audio visual. And I guess now, after making the film, I'd probably say, the audio is probably as important, if not more important, than the picture. And of course, coming from a camera background, that's hard to say.
Yeah.
Because we're the ones that, I don't know if you've ever seen them. There's a brilliant American parody called Living in Oblivion. Oh gosh, anybody get a chance to see it? It's all about making student films, and it's got Steve Buscemi. And anyhow, there's the cameraman is just such a wonderful character, because he's called Hawk, or, oh gosh, somebody will get me up on that. It's some real masculine name, and he wears a patch, an eye patch. Yeah. And I don't think he has an issue with his eye, but he just wears it. And yeah, so the DOP, the cameraman, the director, they're all such, great, and certainly I guess in the Western eras, they were this great sort of the great dictators, and macho sort of dictators that we all kowtow to. But I think now more than ever, with people having a real understanding of all the other departments, you're really there more as a conduit, just to direct people and bring synergy to a film.
A lot of questions come out of that last thing that you just said.
And I'm sorry, cut me down if I'm a bit nervous, so I tend to ramble.
No, it's great.
Too much.
Don't feel bad. You're doing awesome, man. So, okay, I wanted to say this too. One of the things that Tony was talking about, and I literally had never thought about this, is, when you're the executive producer or one of the executive producers, you're minding the budget. And so, your project takes the crew from Australia over to New Zealand and everything. And then when you go on location, like, you've got to think like, I need this shot here. Since all of the crew are here, 20 people, 100 people, however many people are there, what else can I do when I'm standing there? So, we're going to use this barn because it's beautiful. What other shots can we get done that day so we don't just go somewhere for 15 hours and come back and only have 8 minutes of film done?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's remarkable when you think about that part of the logistics and then the money calculator that must be going on in your head all the time.
Yeah, well, that certainly happened on our shoot. I guess one thing was we were all very naive and never made a film like this. So it kind of was every day we woke up, particularly in New Zealand, and obviously we were on a shoestring budget. There were only actually about three of us flew out. Adam, myself, and Pat. Oh, and Michael Long, who was a great supporting actor. Yeah. And so we all sort of lived in a one sort of cheap, it was kind of like a rental apartment. So we all shared the one area. We were there for about a month. And we had to make it up every day because often what we had in place fell through and then, it wasn't right. And then because we were so young, our producer, Pat Raw, it was his first time, he'd ever, produced or even production managed. So it was a huge learning curve for him. So exactly what you said, because I was holding purse strings, and of course, Ben Rupp, the other exec producer, wasn't there at that time. It came down to me. And I guess you do become quite draconian when you only have a limited amount of money. And like you say, you've got to get something in the can. Yeah. You're there. You got to shoot something. Yeah. And that's exactly, we just had to improvise. And a lot of the times, we just go out and speak to people around the corner or and just be inspired, driving around. We go, wow, look at that location. And we go and talk to the people. And this was all in Auckland. And fortunately, the Maori community in particular, and we were focusing on areas that, did appear to be more sort of traditional or rural. And the people there are just so hospitable and so inviting. Yeah. And I've said it before, but the Maori people, the Kiwi people, not just the Maori people, but the Kiwi people really made this film because, without their 100% support and patience, because, we stepped on toes and our ignorance, our cultural ignorance, the film wouldn't have been made. And they kind of tolerated us with a really good sense of humor. They saw we were complete idiots in the field, but they kind of realized we were trying to make a story with a heart, or it had, because I'd give them the pitch. Look, it's all about finding your roots, finding your family, and they kind of go, okay, these guys don't seem to be out here, shooting, a horror film, or not. I love horror films, sure. But we're making something negative. So we got a huge amount of cooperation, and again, it was probably that enabled us to get that 8 minutes a day. And I think that's kind of what we had to try and shoot to get the whole film done in a month. Yeah. Of course, we failed, but we gave it a shot.
Well, you got to start from somewhere. And again, like each one of those decisions, how do I get this done for free? What compromise can I do? Like I don't have $1,000 mistake to make up every, like you're always balancing that. I wanted to ask you about sound too, because I watched the movie and completely enjoyed it. I love watching. I mean, I would call it for my a foreign film, an international film. Yeah. and I loved all the characters, especially Roadie, Mr. Long's character. I love that guy.
He was brilliant. Can I just say too?
Please.
He's in Michael in real life. I don't know if you guys know In Excess, the band.
Yeah, for sure. I love In Excess. One of my favorite bands.
Okay. Well, he used to tour manage them. So he's like Blue Ribbon. He's a veteran of rock and roll, so he knew the character. Yeah. And he obviously toured a lot in the UK. He's actually Australian, but he had a great English accent. He was able to put on a great English accent, and when I first met him, I was kind of like he'd done a bit of theater, and actually he runs Yarias here, so he's quite a big wig in the rock and roll industry. And anyhow, I was like, well, yeah, but can you do an accent and, keep it for, a long period of time? And he was like, sure. So when he turned up, anyhow, in New Zealand, he just stayed in character. He didn't come out. So he became Roadie. Which was a real accolade to a guy who had sort of mainly done theater prior to the film. So hats off to Roadie. He's actually a veteran rock and roller and an Australian.
I was wondering that, because when you see him handle a guitar, that's someone who's had a guitar in their hand before.
That's right. He's a very good player.
Yeah, and his voice was wonderful. The accent aside, just the tone of it was, for me, it was very captivating. I was definitely interested in this guy's life. And when in the story, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but he kind of alludes to the fact that he's been on the road before. And then in the story, when they go on their journey, I mean, he's the perfect guy to have there. This is not a spoiler, but at one point there's some physical conflict between a couple of characters, and he's like on the end of receiving a punch. And he has either seen that or experienced that firsthand on the road, and then you're still on the road together. Yeah, like in the Army, some of my best friends have either been punched by me or have punched me in the mouth, because sometimes you need it,
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's definitely true. He was coming from the real place, and also in the film he was a bit of the Yoda, or he just let he set back, a bit of a Zen character, and let E make all these mistakes. Which was, kind of, it mirrored the reality of our production a little bit.
Yeah. I can definitely, I can appreciate, now that I've seen the movie too, and I, again, don't want to talk at all about towards the end, but you can understand, he was the right choice to go on this adventure. I wanted to ask a production question, and I don't want to be critical, so understand when I ask this, I'm asking it from a place
No, be critical. Look, that's the one thing, and don't be shy, because the one thing, after making this film, the one thing, if I could, and actually I'm trying to do a teaching course, because I'd really love to try and teach a little bit. And I'd also love to make another film, but please ask me any question, because I think one thing when I grew up too, people in film, they didn't share. It was a bit of a closed niche. It was a fraternity, and you kind of kept your knowledge, or certainly when I was trying to get in the industry and learn things, people would keep. That's a generalization. I'm sure there were a lot of wonderful, giving people out there, but I found it hard. So please ask anything.
I will. And by the way, I think any movie that gets made is a miracle. They're all impossible. So yeah, the fact that you've made a movie makes you a superstar to me. The question I have is, during the rap trio's audition, they're in this big spacious room, and the sound is, echoey. And I didn't know, if that's like, hey, it's going to be this way by design. I want it to sound like this, or this works. What was your decision on that sound, and why you picked it in terms of because the rest of the movie sounds totally different in terms of that. So I thought, I wonder if that's purposeful.
Look, the honest answer is it's what we got on the day, and we couldn't ADR that, just too difficult scene. And another reason is there's actually a very funny, but unfortunately it's not a PG version of that rap, which one day it might get out somewhere. It's hilarious, but of course we wanted to make sure that this was a family film, and so actually that scene is really butchered from what it originally was. And one of the other things, and it was a mistake we made earlier. I didn't pay enough attention to sound, and we had a very young crew on sound. And obviously, to do sound with, I think we had one boom and 2 radio mics, and that was it. And there was no boom swinger. Yeah. So the poor guy, and he was just out of college. He had to try and do both, and it was just a tall order, particularly in that situation. That was the sound we got. When we went to the mix, however, and we did the final mix at Trackdown, and they did do an amazing job. It took a long time because of our budget, but they did an amazing job. They decided, well, it's an echoey. This is how it sounds when you're doing an audition. And so, they didn't try to fix it, if you like. So there was an element of intention there, but it certainly came after the event.
And I think that this goes to the nature of the kind of movies that you make, when you're making an indie film or a small budget film. I mean, and that's why, like, again, as a producer, my ear is trained, and I'm like, is that like, hey, this is what we've got. We're going to work with it. And then, okay, it's not ideal, but this is what, like if you rent a space for the day to audition acts, you don't care. You're like, that this space is the place where we're at. And so it is true.
It's got to work.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And again, a lot of it was improvisation as well. And we were relying on friends and family all the time too. So it kind of, there was a lot of improvisation. There was a lot of, making things work, and that's very much part of the industry, as you know. Yep. You just have to make, and from what I gather, even when you get up and you're doing big budget films, they still
always
find the same. I'm not sure if you've been involved in that. I know that you have fingers in a lot of pies, but it's you'd probably know more about that, having interviewed so many people too, that I'm sure they come across a lot of the difficulties. It's overcoming, isn't it? Issues. And that's what I guess you learn in the military, isn't it? There's no like, okay, let's go home, or no, we're not gonna work today. Let's try tomorrow. You got to just roll, haven't you?
Absolutely. It is. So one of the things here at the podcast is people always, they want to talk about this or you should do that. They always assign me extra work. I don't need extra work. I've got plenty of work. My plate is full. But I learned something in the Army, and the sergeant major, he's the guy that runs around and makes sure that you've got what you got, that you're trained, that you're meeting the standard and everything. And he would look at you and go, you got what you got. And you're like, but I don't have what I need. It's like, you got what you got. Execute the mission. And you're like, oh, I get it. This is what I've got. And so you go out and you do it. And at the big, gigantic budget level, you get to care about nits, but there's always nits to pick, And so you get this, I guess I would say you get like this line of quality that's required with the big budget movie. But with the indie movies, you don't have to do that. Even like the look of all the people, like you got to go actually cast and have people in the movie that were actual Maori people, and they're from that. They didn't have to look as Maori people. They didn't have to look a certain way because you're just like, no, you're from here. You can't necessarily do that in a giant budget movie. They're every single thing becomes a decision, and you guys get to go out and roll something. And I like that part. I like when you watch like these Nordic movies, from like Finland, when they have a film that comes out, the people who star in them look like real people, Man, that might be a little
Absolutely.
paunchy.
Yeah.
Their nose might have been broken when they were a kid, and I'm just like, yeah, that's a real person. And it's so easy to believe. It's one of the reasons I think Britain has such great actors. It's.
No, I was just going to say that, but also America too. And I see it more and more in the bigger productions. But and it's a mark, I think, of incredible thought or appreciation. I mean, you again, I digress to the Coen brothers, but you look at all the bit parts in the Coen brothers, and the same with British films, great British films. The bit parts are just extraordinary. They're played, often by real characters that, funny enough, in that situation, usually they're trained. But look, in our circumstance, we were just again very fortunate to be able to meet extraordinary Maori characters as we traveled around, who were just perfect for the parts. And the thing, because dancing and music is such a strong part of their culture in the Maori community, they're all incredible. I mean, it's a cliche, but they're just multi-talented. It's for example, like Adam Saunders, he can sing and dance like nobody's business. I mean, he's a freak. He can sing and dance incredibly. And these people, for example, Rabbit, the Thomas Stowers is the character. We're actually at a festival. It was a day off, or it was a day where we didn't have any locations, and I was out desperately looking. We turned up at a festival, and there's a guy up on stage, and he's dressed in drag, I think, and he's this huge guy, and he's singing Barry White, and he's singing Barry White better than Barry White.
Wow.
And yeah, and I'm just like, I've got to meet that guy. He's just insane. And it was Thomas Stowers, and I get to know him, and we're just talking behind stage, and I'm saying, look, we need a villain. We need him next week. Can you play the part? And he goes, well, actually, I'm a boxer by trade. So here's this guy singing Barry White up on stage at a community festival, and we're somewhere out of Auckland or something. And the next week he's playing the bad guy in the film. And again, and I'm sorry to go on about it, but it wouldn't have been made without the assistance of the Maori people, and again, as I say, their patience and sense of humor, because we were just crazy. I guess I should say it probably helped a lot having Keisha Castle-Hughes, because again, that was just a gift from God to get her involved, because obviously she's an A-list, and I know she's got a lot of has had a lot of exposure in America after Whale Rider.
Right.
I believe it grossed something like 30 million or 40 million in America, which was extraordinary. I don't think any New Zealand film had done that before, or even Australian, bar Crocodile Dundee, or one of the older ones. But I think, having Keisha Castle-Hughes really gave us a bit of cred when we obviously had no cred.
When you needed it, yeah.
Yeah, when we needed it. The Keisha Castle-Hughes card was, we're just doing it with Keisha. Keisha, say hi.
Yeah.
And that kind of worked a lot too. So thank you, Keisha, if you ever watch this. The film wouldn't have been made without you too.
I wanted to ask also about the cousin who does the Lord of the Rings tours. And I just, I absolutely believe that that's what that guy does for a living. And then you're just like, this is perfect. New angle. I mean, he was so believable as that. Like, he just wore that same outfit everywhere. And I'm like, that's literally what that guy does.
I tell you, again, just a natural. We met him. He was a friend of a friend's, I think the runner. And he was a local character very colorful local character, should I say. Rode motorbikes and always very cheeky with the police. And that was him. We just said, look, could you play this crazy character? And he was like, sure. And yeah, he just became that character. And I don't think he'd had any training whatsoever. And again, just he turned up on set. He performed, take after take with us. And in fact, the crazy thing is, most of those guys, local guys, they only took 1 or 2 takes. That was the mad thing. Yeah, mm-hmm. I think it was rare we ever did more than 3 or 4 takes. Again, I was shooting as well, and being as you said, the exec producer. So I'm thinking, okay, that's going to be more terabytes of data, and that's more for me to edit. So if we can keep it down to 3 takes or 4 takes, and you set up a precedent like that, then people get it right.
So when the next project comes up and you go to market, try to find some money to get it made, what job do you want to shop out that you had to do this time? You're like, you know what? I love doing all of it, but if I could get this off my back, I will gladly pay for that.
Look, without a question, sort of producing, stroke exec producing, hats off to the guys that do it. And actually, I've got 2 great friends that are line producers. And on the big budgets, you have a line producer who's pretty much doing all the dirty work, as you mentioned before, making things happen every day, hiring, firing. And that is a brutal, brutal job. And it's so hard to do that and keep tabs on other elements. So definitely never want to be a producer or an exec producer again. I'll take any other role. I don't mind in front of the camera, but any other role. But not that one.
Yeah, actually, Tony was saying a similar thing. He doesn't mind executive producing, but he's like, it's so hard. I'm their friend, but I can't be because I have a job to do. And sometimes that job requires firing somebody, and saying, hey, this ain't working. You got to go. By the way, I love you. Let's talk next week, but you can't work here. And, and it's like, it's just horrible to have to do that to people that this is their dream come true and not today anymore, and that's hard. It's really hard. And honestly, for a director, executive producer, editor, it's just too many hats, to do it all well. You really need help to get all those things done right.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't I wasn't the editor as such. I did a version, but then there was a recut done as well. But yeah, look, it is unfortunately with low budget filmmaking, and if you've got a vision or you want something done, it just comes down to economics. I would have been really happy to have outsourced all the work. Look, we ran into a lot of trouble once we got a rough cut. We couldn't really move it anywhere, and we were fortunate enough then to get an exec producer on called Steve Gjorgjiev, and he then opened up the doors with a lot of talented other editors and sound. Basically, the post area, he opened that up so that it was brought to a level of professionalism or a level of polish that was acceptable, I think, because that's the other thing. Getting a film to kind of pass, we all take it for granted, and I know you understand this because you picked up the audio, but actually getting really good quality picture and audio comes down to a really stringent post-production and really talented people. So I'm just desperately looking for, because there's so many people. I just wanted to mention 1 or 2, but go ahead with the next question. I'll just
that photography side. You're a camera guy coming up, and you can look at the film, but you don't always get, and I'm just making an assumption here, you don't always get the shot that you want to get. Like this is the shot that these are the shots that are available to us. If we had time and budget, we could scout a different location. We could wait for a different time of the day.
Yeah.
But that must have driven you crazy. Yeah, because that post-production is served by great pre-production, site location, scouting, and all that stuff. How much of that was hard for you as, again, as a camera guy coming up?
Look, again, I think we were really fortunate. I think, for a lot of different kinds of films, because this was a road movie, New Zealand is just drop dead gorgeous. You can't go wrong anywhere you point a camera. It's impressive. So, we kind of, we were very fortunate. And then as I said, we were very fortunate that we actually got the cooperation of the local people. So that, the two of those made location scouting and, if you like, shot design easy. And again, the light's amazing out there. And we were kind of in mid-season, and that's always a great time to shoot anywhere. I think, if you can get spring or autumn almost anywhere in the world, it's better than winter or summer. Because, obviously, in some countries, you get no light in winter. And in Australia, for example, the light is incredibly harsh, so from about 10 o'clock on, and I'm sure it's the same in America in areas, from about 10 to 4, it's just ugly and harsh and horrible. So, it's tough.
Yeah. And these are things that not everybody realizes, but you're right. Like when it's summertime and the sun is high in the sky and as high as it gets, it doesn't have that magic that it does when it's that fall and it's lower on the horizon. It definitely makes a difference. The other thing I wanted to ask is, why New Zealand? Why the Aboriginal folks there as opposed to just staying at home and doing it in Australia and some kid grabbing a didgeridoo and finding his voice that way?
Look, that would all come down to, as much as I said, I've just been always intrigued by the Maori culture. Also because they're one of the few, I think, cultures, indigenous cultures that have stood up to the sort of Western avalanche. And, they even, they called the shots. I think the British gave up fighting them, or at a very early age, they took one look at, their all black sort of lineup, and they just, and also because they're a very sophisticated culture as well. Very, all the Polynesian, like the Hawaiian culture too, incredibly sophisticated, and they've been around so long. And so they kind of, anyhow, they were able to agree on a treaty where, which I don't, it's the why they're able to agree on a treaty very early on, which, enabled them to keep their, individuality, to keep their culture and to keep their country. And so they've sustained that ever since, and again, so much by song and dance. And the one thing you do see there is respect, particularly with the young and the old. Adam had some, they joke about it. He had some family that were a little bit cheeky with the police, shall we say, or, over in New Zealand, they say, there's the in-laws and outlaws, and the outlaws are actually a motorcycle gang. So anyhow, I saw these guys that were outlaw motorcycle gang, and, when a grandmother spoke to them, they were just little boys.
Yeah.
And that's a kind of community that out there, there's absolute respect still to your whānau, which is your family. And that's inspiring. So, that's something you never get tired of. And I guess, again, what intrigued me, with the Maori And then I guess the second element, sorry to go on, but Adam Saunders, obviously being privy to Adam. And Adam was, if you like, they always say in documentary, it's all about access, and film to some degree. But Adam, was just extraordinarily talented, and he was part Maori. So he actually wanted to go. He'd lived in Australia, so he hadn't spent a great deal of time since he was very young in New Zealand. So it was almost, there was elements of truth in the whole him returning back there, because he did actually go back to understand more, or he certainly found out more about himself and his culture. And one of the things for me which was so moving was his relationship, which actually is mirrored in real life, with Tama Lundon, who actually plays himself. And I'm not sure how big the Herbs are in America, but in Australia and New Zealand, again, they're like, they're like the Leonard Cohen are there. These guys are huge. They're like, how could I say it? The Bob Marley kind of New Zealand, and not just for their musical prowess. It's because of their political, underlying statements that they were against French nuclear testing or any nuclear testing. They were against. There were many things that they fought about, and poverty, and there was also a lot of conflict with tribes in New Zealand in the early days, and they wanted to bring around harmony, so they'd play at the different venues. And one of the things that they always try to push is peace. So here you've got Adam sort of really spending a lot of time with Tama, and of course they're both musicians. So when we weren't filming, they were jamming, and Tama Lundon is a guy. Just to show how understated and beautiful he is, he's just the nicest person. Invited us to stay. In fact, we used to spend half our time in the Winnebago, because that was our home as well. That's in the film. We kind of lived in there as well. He used to just let us leave the Winnebago outside his place, but he gave us the beds in his own house. And one day he brought something out, and Adam started immediately playing. He was going, "We'll go easy." Eric Clapton gave me that guitar. So this is the kind of guy you're dealing with. And I guess, sorry, I've gone right off the tangent, but great. Again, we were just so lucky to have Tama in the film. And again, just, played himself and was just so helpful. And just couldn't do enough.
And when you're talking about the film and his role in the film, those photographs, I'm assuming, were his photographs, and talking about that social work that he was doing with the band. Is that
exactly
correct? Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely, 100% correct. That was all original material from. Yeah, there were a lot of issues. There was a lot of trouble in some of the French Polynesian islands, and they actually went over there to do charity concerts, to protest against the French at that time. So very brave and very real. These were violent times. So it took a lot of balls. They weren't making money. So they did it for the right reasons.
Yeah, that's I was hoping we would get into that, and I'm really glad that we did, because we don't know who Tama Lundon is. I'm going to put a link up right now for anybody to look at his IMDb, so you can at least spell his name right, because it's not easy to find him. But
Lundon.
Lundon. And so that's in the show right there. If you're looking in the show notes, I'll put it into the show notes later on if you're on the podcast side. But yeah, the point of these things, and one of the things I love about the show is we get to expose a lot of people that are incredible talents from their part of the world, but because they don't break out in the West for whatever reason, they don't exist. We had this wonderful, another smaller budget movie. It was made in Cambodian by a couple of, I think they're first generation, and they might be native born, but they're Southeast Asians. And they made this movie during the killing field era of Cambodia, but it was about music. And
brilliant.
Yeah, and it's a gorgeous film. Just the shots, and then it's about music and love. And so they have, and I can't remember his name, but his first name is Shin, and he does that song, and I can't say any of the words in it, but it's about home. It's about home. And it's a world famous song, except for, not in America. It's sort of like it's like their version of the girl from Ipanema. Like it's that legendary song.
Okay.
So her name's Neardey Trinh, and she's one of the producers of the movie. But yeah, it's just this love story, but it's got a lot of this traditional music, and they basically take this national song, and it's almost like karaoke. Like each character's kind of singing their version of it along the way. And it's just such a gorgeous way to tell the story. I'll send you a link to it if you're interested.
Yeah, I'd love to. That sounds amazing. And that's what is I find it's humbling when you meet these musicians and people that are actually spreading the word, if you like, a positive word. Fighting the good fight through music, humor. I mean, God, the guys that can do it with humor. We're not worthy. Again, but the musicians again, there's so much talent out there, and being able to do something like that where you're not subversively, but you're actually planting a seed, making people go, wow, okay, they're, I hadn't thought about that, or look, it's an introduction to somebody else's life.
Yeah.
And I guess that's where I've been very privileged. Again, just, from doing so much doco in the old days. I think it's very similar to yourself. You get a world education, and it just humbles you.
It does.
And I did a Lonely Planet when it first came out, that series. And we were doing the Mayans in Mexico, and it was tough going too, because we had to hike up all these, the Aztecs built all these great pyramids, but also there's volcanic mountains and everything, and you're in the jungle. But again, you meet the local people and the indigenous people, and it's also like I did some shows in Brazil, and I did a series on leprosy, and just meeting these people in Brazil and leprosy, and then seeing the doctors, again, who are on the front line. I'm sure you've seen it all in Afghanistan and Iraq, but it's the teachers and the doctors that are out there. You meet them, and it's not even so much the NGOs, it's the people that are involved in the grassroots, with the communities. Not they're telling the community so much what to do, but they're working with them, that you just think, God, these are the unsung heroes. And I always have to take a step back, because like you said, I'm always thinking, okay, I've only got 2 weeks. I got to get in. We've got to get out. We got to get the shot. And, unfortunately these days, in my era, it was easy. You turn up with a camera, most people liked you. Nowadays, there's so many people, and unfortunately, people doing it for the wrong reasons. Some people, or it's not altruistic, or it's not, at least, look, I was doing it for myself, I suppose, initially, but I tried to keep on the straight and narrow. I can't say I didn't sell out, but
you got to make money. Like some. Yeah.
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
You've got to, unfortunately, in our business, that you got to keep reinventing yourself. Mm-hmm. And hats off to you with your program. I mean, that would have taken balls to go from your background. But having said that, you've always been in communication. So
yeah,
I guess.
Yeah, human communication. By the way, the movie is called In the Life of Music. That's what I was referencing.
Oh,
and the
okay.
Song
well done.
It's called Champa Batambang. It's about Batambang. And it was written, I got to get these things in there because it's so important, by Sin Samuth. And this guy wrote one of the classic songs the world has ever heard, and so it's really neat. Anyhow, you guys should definitely check that out for sure. But most importantly, because we're talking about your movie right now, this musical chord that you set, and it's called Find Your Voice. And literally, I gave that advice to someone who's like, I wrote my own song. What do you think? And I get to hear a lot of music because we have a lot of musicians on. And I'm like, I hear your influence, but I don't hear your voice, and it's such a vital part for a musician. Just because you can put music together on your computer doesn't mean that you can be proud of it, but there's something more that you have to find as an artist. And it seems like that's sort of like the point of this movie is like you have to find that something more.
Thank you so much for picking that up, because it's often lost on people. Because, look, it is a very simple film. And I've always called it a matinee. It's a roller coaster ride, but it's a matinee.
Yeah.
It's a simple matinee, and it's not pretentious. It's not trying to be a blockbuster. It's not. It's just a fun, simple film that I wanted to make. For that my son would be able to watch. He's only 12 and. He's a big fan of Adam's. He doesn't like my work that much, but that's a father-son thing.
Yeah.
But look, he kind of likes the film. He's quite proud, which is really weird, a bit, because it's on the scheme of things, it doesn't rate with all the incredible films out there. But he's proud, I guess, of it. And look, I guess just to help me along here, just remind me. Sorry, I just got.
Well, we're just talking about finding your voice, finding, and that's.
Yeah, that's right. It certainly it has been about content. I suppose that's what it was all about. Trying to find his voice. So it's obviously it's what it says, find your voice. It's an obvious name. Actually, the name, the editor who came on board later, that Steve Jaggi brought to the party, his name was Adrian Powers. He actually came up with that name. And we're all like, no, it's too basic. But then it was like, well, it is what it is, and it says what it is. It's about finding your voice. Yeah. And I think, particularly in music, I spent a lot of time in London, and I tried to do a doco. For some reason, the BBC weren't interested in it. But it was about the time David Cameron was hugging a hoodie. I don't know if you ever remember that.
Yes.
It Hug a Hoodie came in, where there was just a crime, child crime. And I don't know how the parallels to LA or New York, but the crime in London, we were living, I lived for about 15, 20 years near Notting Hill. But there's, people don't understand. They see Notting Hill and they think of the film. But there are estates literally 2 blocks away. And you go into these estates and it's like Compton, and so there's another side. So these kids grow up, and I've really digressed. But I started following them around. They showed me, because of a contact I had done some work with in Sierra Leone, I kind of got allowed in. And then they showed me they were drilling guns out of replicas. Mm-hmm. So they're making real guns out of replica guns. And they had sort of small arsenals. And it was all about turf, because selling pot, because they had to, it wasn't about going out so much and mugging people. It was about just looking after their own turf for selling pot. And these kids were all 14, 15. Right. And I just was blown away by it. And I guess the thing that struck me, and this is when I met Adam, he was in a band too, singing, and sorry, Adam, your lyrics have never been, they're kind of entertaining, but they're, it was all about love, let's say, or what a guy wants to do. And that's, we brought that into the film, where he's trying to sing the most ridiculous, trying to impress Keisha. Anyhow, long story short, these guys were singing the most horrendous lyrics in their rap songs. And, it was just kind of like, well, come on, guys, here you've got, if you're going to create something and make, and they were really talented musicians. Well, why not really think about the lyrics? Why don't you rap about your single mum who's struggling to pay money, and that actually the pot you're selling subsidizes the whole of London, and that's why the government turns a blind eye. Or I'm going off the Richter here, but the whole thing, it's I think he learns from Tama that it's so important to express or to talk about what's going on in your community and how you feel.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real problem with our kids and social media now. It's ironic that they've got a platform more than we've ever had, but unfortunately it's being used for all the wrong reasons. And the percentage that actually use it for real self-expression is down to kind of, the artists or the musos that are, serious. And it's like, well, why can't my son, I wish he would express himself, but he's too interested in being cool.
Yeah.
I'll probably get in trouble if he ever hears this, but
Okay.
it's all about being cool, being seen, and I guess that's what it was all about, trying to say.
There's nothing wrong with making, NXS is a band where, you had good music, but once Michael Hutchence added the word and the smolder, it was like, whoa, this is something different. And they didn't have a lot of social conscience in their stuff. And there's a space for that, but not everybody's Michael Hutchence either, so you have got to find it. And the other thing is, we've learned this from the show. We had a rapper on, his name's Drez from Black Sheep. You've heard his music, but he was one of the pioneers. He was the first guy to get on Johnny Carson, as a rapper. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Gosh.
And he said, basically, and I'll make the story shorter, but he has this recurring dream where he's a slave running away, trying to break through, and he gets to this microphone in his dream. And it's like, what are you going to say right now? And when you look at the power of the modern microphone and what you can do with it, I struggle to understand why someone wouldn't at least consider saying something more important than a lot of the things. I don't want to be critical of anybody's art, but there's so many things you're like that. If that's what you've got, if that's what that moment is for you, then God bless, you're doing it. But maybe take a moment and think about what really matters to you,
Oh, definitely. And but also I think people do it in different ways. And I think that's what's great about your show too, is that it's kind of, I constantly push myself to broaden my horizons, because sometimes people are expressing themselves through art and you just don't understand it. And that's, you're going back to In Excess or Hutchins, it can be one line. Sometimes something, because beautiful poetry, is always the residue of profound thought. So the simpler and the better. That's why, they say a picture paints 1,000 words. It truly do. It does. If you can say, something, and that's where great films are, Jacques Tati, or, even Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin. I mean, God, what they could say, and pathos and humor and all sorts of things, and even without saying a word. So there's so much people can do, but I guess it's just thinking. Do we have any time these days? This is the problem.
No.
You think with COVID, it would have enabled, but I think Netflix God love them, and I'd love to be on there one day. They made a lot of money, but I don't know, if people were really investigating. Here's one example. I've got my doctor's a friend, and he has this. He's he wears bare feet a lot, and he's quite lateral. Anyhow, he has his own website. It's now it's Activated Walls is the name, and it's basic graffiti. It's graffiti all over the world. It's called Activated Walls, and it's part of he's a curator for his own virtual gallery. And what he does is he does art on restaurants and walls, but the art only has like a month and then it's replaced. And that's part of the beauty of it. that it just says a statement. It's got to say something, and it's not caught up in the ego of, yeah, that's my piece of art, that's my film, it'll be here forever. It's that whole, it's here now, that's me, and it's gone tomorrow. And there's something beautiful about that, because then you got to keep recreating. But it's all those avenues that I would never have looked at graffiti until he kind of turned me onto it. Mm-hmm. And that's my doctor.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's interesting because graffiti is invisible art. It literally can be right in front of your face, and not something that you would ever even think to ponder, even to even acknowledge it exists. And you're right, someone's art is someone's art. It's just when you see art that's shallow and vapid, you're like, well, that's pretty shallow, pretty vapid, but you know what? It's a good start.
Yeah, well, that's right too.
My advice is always slow it down, strip it down, see if it's still a good idea. And if that idea can live, whatever it is, whether you're taking the production value out of a song or you're painting less on the strip it down, slow it down, and see what's there. And you might find something that is truly unique for you. That's sort of my basic advice that I try to follow myself, but I'm terrible at it.
Are you a musician?
I have a guitar back right over here. Anyhow,
yeah,
I can play a little bit. I can carry a tune when I sing, but that's, you can also only have so many things that you're expressive and good at, So like, I'd love to make a movie or write a screenplay like you have, but who's got time to do all the things that you want to do,
Never say never.
I'm not saying never. I just don't have time right now, So, and I am busy creating something. So that's my out.
Absolutely. Yeah. And giving a voice to people like me. I mean, thank you so much. Because look, it's a great experience.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah. And I don't want to take too much more of your time, but I do want to ask you one more question.
Great.
What is next? I mean, the movie's out. Everybody should watch it. It's called Find Your Voice. Watch it on Amazon, and there's a link there, and it'll be in the show notes. But what is next? Surely you've got some kind of a project you're going to try to get going on here soon.
Yeah, well, look, that's always a big one, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I guess this one took so long to make. It's really made me reticent about going through and making all the same mistakes. So I guess I'm trying to get it right on paper, which again is probably the best thing anybody can do. Get it right, just like what you said. Strip it back. Just keep going back to it, looking at it, get it right on paper, and then move forward. I guess we wouldn't even be in this situation if it wasn't for, Steve Jaggy obviously helped a lot. Pat Raw, the producer, is always stuck in there, and Ben Rupp, who's a dear friend of mine, and he actually put up the initial seed money. Funny enough, he's from Columbus, Ohio. I met him at Ohio State University.
Nice.
And
Buckeyes.
Yeah, good old Buckeyes. They came through and financed the film in the early stages. And, it's their support that's kind of kept it going and kept it alive and got us to a stage where IndieCan, came on board. And it's not easy to get a deal out there or just to get recognition. So we're forever grateful for Randolph and IndieCan and the team there for getting involved. That, I guess, brings me around to where I do have a script. I guess everybody's got a script.
Yeah.
It's based on a book. It's called Song for a Scarlet Runner. It's a brilliant book. So for young people, it's a young children's book. It's an amazing script. And it's an amazing book. But I kind of took the script off in a different direction, and I haven't had much luck pushing it yet. But it's an extraordinary tale about a young girl who sort of goes through all these worlds and ends up with a young friend, and she has to overcome all these battles, and I guess there's similar themes. It's she. In this journey, it's about finding herself. But I'm always looking for projects. Pete, I'd love to hear anything. that, I was looking at something that you did, but because sometimes you just think, was that you or somebody else? Did you do that film where you were following the caravans around?
No, that wasn't.
No, that was someone. Okay, because you've done some crazy stuff too, and and I was just thinking, well, these could have been films, or some of them documentaries. Are you doing much doco?
Oh man, well, so I've done what I call as a podumentary, and I talked to a bunch of, and actually I have to finish releasing the rest of it, but I talked to a bunch of former inmates who had done things like murder, that kind of thing, and I wanted to understand their condition before, during, and after prison, and then how the external environment impacted them, whether it was the prison system or whatever it was. And so I talked to all these different people, and we've made this entire storyline. So as soon as I get that off my desk, yes, there's several different projects that I'm interested in trying to find a way to create it, because I think that the good thing about the podcast medium is that you can truly do it in just audio, or maybe audio with some still images, and you can really tell the story in that way and do it for a budget that I can afford, because basically I just outwork the problems and work within my limited budget. But that's the main thing I've done. But you're right. All of my spy experience, there are so many stories and documentaries. Like if someone would just give me a little bit of money, I could bring back incredible stories,
Have you ever thought of revisiting, or it's really not the time, obviously now, but sometime down the line? I always think that's, particularly in your situation, with the world just changing so quickly and rapidly.
Yeah. And I like to always say, like, I know a lot of warlords. I really do.
Oh my God. Have you seen that film, Lord of War?
Oh, I think I have. Has that got Nicolas Cage, that one?
Yeah.
I've seen that. Yeah. And there's
God, that scares the hell out of me. But what a brilliant film.
Yeah. So there's those kind of things where I can put together a story, but it's all time and money, and deciding like which idea needs to get out of me. I'm sure you can recognize that, like 25 different ideas, but which one?
Which one?
Yeah,
that's really nice. Yeah, I guess I'm in the same situation, and then it's also thinking, well, what will it achieve too?
Right.
Or what? Yes. That's what's the means to an end.
Yeah. Well, people always say, like, you need to write your book, and I'm like, yeah, someone needs to give me an advance, and because I can't spend a year writing a book and then be like, you didn't make any money. Like I don't have that luxury,
That's the problem too, isn't it? We've got to all pay the bills, and look, that is one thing I have to say too. I didn't say it is, my God, how patient and amazing my wife and my son have been too, because it is an indulgence like writing a book. And the fact that they gave me the time to make the film, over, years and years and years, and put up with the highs and lows, because you get very low in the middle, and when it's not going anywhere, and and just them tolerating me. Thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate it.
And it's a big sacrifice for them. They don't have you around.
Oh, huge. Huge. I mean, there was one point there where, like, I'd sort of tapped into the mortgage. That the old cliche.
Yeah.
It's a scary business, as you know. Get an advance.
That's it. Hey, someone comes with an advance and says, "Yeah, no worries. We'll market your book, and we want you to spend a year just writing it, and here's some help." Okay, great. Then I can justify it, but I can't just on a lark, do it and be like.
And then we do the doco.
Yes. Yeah. I'd love to if they would give me a camera, you and I will go run around Afghanistan, be as safe as can be, and we'll come back with something incredible. Someone's just got to break off a check.
Definitely. Or as long as it's kind of calmed down a bit, it's still, it's, I don't know how you guys do that. Hats off to, again, the media too. I think it's got to be born into you.
It's a developed skill for sure, though. Like when you come in, like wherever you go, you actually have to care about the people you're there. You have to ask the right kind of questions.
Of course.
Like if I was to show up in Australia, even if, like, the one thing I always try to say, and we're really bad at this in the American military, is don't try to out Iraq and Iraqi. Don't try to out Afghan and Afghan. Just, just say, hey, how do you guys do this? If I was to say, how do you guys do Christmas? Because it's summertime, it makes no sense to us. You can't help but tell me about it,
That's so funny because my wife hates Christmas here. She's English. And I met her over there. She's been long suffering for 20 years. And we've been back here 10 years. And she's just Christmas. She's like, I need a fire. I need hot brandy and eggnog. And, and why are we having a turkey? And it's 90 degrees Fahrenheit or 40 degrees Celsius outside. And I mean, the one thing I always try to do with my son is get Christmas barrels, which is we go surfing, which in fact, it's never happened, but that's the laugh. Yeah. We always go out and try and have a surf Christmas day.
That's funny.
Anyhow, we're right off the subject.
But I mean, this is my exact point. Like, I just bring it up and you just go on for 5 minutes talking about it. But that's what people like me do when it comes to like going to these other places. So when I'm sitting across from someone, when they say you're safe here, nothing will happen to you, I have to let them be my security, and it's not all the time. It's not with a rash decision, but I have to work my way in to build trust with them and then measure that trust and then, let them know they can trust me by exposing myself to their protection or whatever it is.
Yeah, sure. And I guess you're giving a part of yourself every time, and you're obviously putting yourself out on a line. So I really appreciate that too. And I guess that is, we all kind of have to do that, don't you? You have to kind of just believe in other people as well, because it's so easy. You and your business, my business, or our business now, but it's so easy to get jaded.
Yeah.
So easy to get cynical and bitter and twisted too. After 1,000 refusals. Oh, that was another thing. Can I just one thing very quick? I know we've got to go. Wow. Being invited to the Maui Film Festival, can I just say that was a turning point. That, that was more than enough return than I could ever have dreamed for in my entire life. Being invited there by Barry and Wendy, Barry, who's run it for 20 years. His name, Barry. Let me see, I've got it. Yeah, he broke Keisha's film in Maui. So it was actually Maui where it was discovered, Whale Rider. So sadly, she couldn't turn up for our film there, but it was the most amazing experience. The hospitality was second to none, and the fact that they gave our little film a shot was just amazing. And it's a moonlight theater. It's in the most beautiful golf course.
Love it.
And there it's one thing. Sadly, my wife and son couldn't come, but it was the highlight of my life. Being there with Pat Raw, producer, and Adam Saunders and Ben Rupp, the loyal exec, and just we had so much fun. And then when it was all over, because there were some amazing films, and we were very humbled, by the experience. But we actually won the audience award, which was so kind, because we weren't in that league, but I think the audience just were very friendly and very kind, and I think they saw something maybe like you did in the heart of the film. So
absolutely,
real appreciation. Thanks, Barry. Thanks, Wendy, too, and thank you again. I mean, it's been a great opportunity just to talk. And
well, anytime everybody should watch Find Your Voice. You can watch it on Amazon. It's available on other platforms, but Amazon's simple. And all you got to really do is type Find Your Voice in there, and you guys will absolutely love it. I love when we explore these other cultures that are so, they're adjacent, but they're so different. And, the Maori people are that, the Aboriginal people from Australia, or, our Native Americans here, and to understand their life and to spend a few moments in it, I think it's a great set of colors to paint from to really express what they go through. And same thing with the tribes of the Middle East. You understand. And one of the things I love to do, here I am extending the show.
Yeah. No, do it. I love it.
But when you go to somewhere, if I was to come to Australia, or if I was to sit across in some kind of Maori hamlet or something like that, and when they are hospitable and when they do express who they are, it's the best. Just say, I love it here. You guys are so hospitable. One of my favorite lines is say, I've been to a lot of places in the world. You guys are some of the most hospitable people I've ever met. And it's all true. And they love it because everybody wants to be a good host. Everybody wants to make you their best dish. Let them know, like, this is the best. I love it. Thank you for doing that,
Oh, well, I'm definitely a richer person in that I've learned and been humbled by the Maori culture and community too. No question. That's not BS. That's real. Because I'm no saint. I'm not going to be there at the pearly gates, I'll tell you. So, I can only improve in my life. And they really, showed me a lot in how to go, and live one day at a time and enjoy things, enjoy. Yeah. And they're just in touch. So, it's just been a fantastic experience all round, as this has too.
Yeah, Chris, thank you so much.
I don't want it to end.
This is great. We've been going at it for almost an hour and a half, and we could easily do another hour, but let's just save it. We'll do another one soon. And thanks, man, for coming on. Everybody definitely go watch Find Your Voice. You'll have a good time. And come on, it's $5 on Amazon. You guys got $5.
Yeah, Amazon. Thank you too. It just rocks that they've made this kind of film available to all of America. So please watch it, guys. I'm sure you'll have a laugh. Even just for the Herb's music. And Keisha, she never disappoints. But again, really, thank you, Pete. You've been amazing. Thanks. And I'm sorry I've waffled.
No, you're okay. I love waffles.